What is AHK-CU and can it help with hair growth? In this video, I'm going to talk about the science behind AHK-CU in both its topical and injectable forms and whether it can help with hair growth. I'll also cover some theoretical research doses for injectable use. Everything I discuss is for educational and entertainment purposes only and is not medical advice. You may have already heard of the copper peptide GHK-CU, also known as copper tripeptide 1, which is currently being used for skin, collagen, and hair growth in both injectable and topical forms. However, what you might not have heard of is AHK-CU, also known as copper tripeptide 3, a synthetic copper peptide that is theorized to specifically offer advantages over normal GHK-CU for hair growth. AHK-CU is similar in mechanism of action and chemical structure compared to GHK-CU. Whereas GHK-CU is molecularly composed of glycine, histidine, lysine, and copper, AHK-CU is alanine, histidine, lysine, and copper. The sole replacement of glycine with alanine in the chemical structure is hoped to facilitate more targeted uptake in the systems relevant for hair growth. Otherwise, it is theorized to function similarly to GHK-CU, operating as a copper uptake facilitator for skin and hair cells to undergo cellular reactions, regeneration, and anti-inflammation. But GHK-CU has already been well studied for both skin and hair growth. Is AHK-CU really superior for hair? Well, after a ton of digging, I could only find one academic article on all of PubMed and the internet on AHK-CU, and all other sources and articles on AHK-CU also only cite this one academic article. So, a 2007 paper from Seoul National University by a group of researchers is the only medical evidence for AHK-CU that currently exists. The paper is an in vitro study of human hair follicles and dermal papilla cells, or DPCs, and their reaction within a solution composed of various concentrations of AHK-CU. After 12 days, it was shown that the solutions containing 10 to the negative 12 to 10 to the negative 9 moles per liter of AHK-CU resulted in the greatest amount of hair growth, with higher concentrations leading to statistically significant lower hair growth. There was no significant change versus control for the solution with only 10 to the negative 13 concentration. These results suggest that an effective minimum dose of AHK-CU has to be achieved for accelerated hair growth, and that concentrations that are too high might actually inhibit growth, potentially due to copper toxicity. This same pattern was observed for the cultured human dermal papilla cells, which are cells at the base of hair follicles that control hair growth. AHK-CU solutions at moderate to moderate high concentrations increase the proliferation and count of viable cells after 28 hours. After 72 hours, the AHK-CU solution group had 3.48% less apoptotic DPCs, or cells undergoing programmed cell death, compared to the non-AHK-CU solution group, but this result was not statistically significant. Next, researchers examined the effects of AHK-CU on BCL2 and BAX gene expression in the DPCs. Upregulation of the BCL2 gene promotes cell survival, while upregulation of the BAX gene induces apoptosis and cell death. After 24 hours, AHK-CU was shown to upregulate BCL2 and downregulate BAX, leading to increased cell survival. Finally, researchers took a look at how AHK-CU affected cleaved caspase 3 and PARP cleavage fragment levels in DPCs. Cleaved caspase 3 is the activated executioner form of the primary protein that chops up cells undergoing apoptosis, and PARP cleavage fragments are PARP proteins that have been cleaved by caspase 3. Therefore, high concentrations of PARP cleavage fragments are indicators of programmed cell death. After 72 hours, lower levels of both cleaved caspase 3 and PARP cleavage fragments were found in the AHK-CU solution group, signaling lower levels of cell death. Altogether, this research tells a story that AHK-CU stimulates hair growth by increasing the proliferation of DPCs and lowering the rate of apoptosis. This effectively increases the anagen or hair growth phase of hair follicles. What this also means is that AHK-CU will not help in instances where hair follicles have already been permanently lost. So this is great that there is strong mechanism explanation of how AHK-CU helps hair growth, but what's conspicuously missing from the study is how AHK-CU compares to GHK-CU. GHK-CU has essentially already been very well studied for its effects on improving hair growth through essentially the same mechanisms. So any theory that AHK-CU more specifically targets the hair and GHK-CU has a greater emphasis on skin are purely anecdotal. The logic also goes the other way. To me, there doesn't seem any reason to believe that AHK-CU also doesn't help the skin in the same way that GHK-CU does. Now, what about the safety of AHK-CU? There's essentially no clinical evidence specifically on the safety of AHK-CU, given that there's only one clinical study at all and it makes no mention of its safety specifically. However, from literature and research online, it's probably very likely that AHK-CU has exactly the same safety profile as GHK-CU. The 3 amino acid chain sequence in AHK-CU has essentially nothing dangerous or toxic about it, and your body is already used to metabolizing large amounts of these amino acids and peptides daily in your bloodstream. Both copper peptides also likely serve the same general role as copper ion carriers in the body for various cellular reactions. Therefore, the only safety indications of AHK-CU should be the same as those associated with GHK-CU. And GHK-CU itself has extensively documented clinical evidence of safety. The notable concern with these peptides then is copper toxicity. So, can you use both AHK-CU and GHK-CU without overdosing on copper? The upper limit of copper toxicity for an adult is 10 mg per day. Meanwhile, the molecular weight of AHK-CU is 416.9 grams per mole, and GHK-CU is 401.9 grams per mole, with each containing 1 copper ion weighing 63.55 grams per mole. This means that each 1 milligram of AHK-CU and GHK-CU has approximately 0.158 milligrams of copper. That means to breach the safety limits of 10 milligrams of copper per day, one has to inject or have over 63 milligrams of AHK-CU or GHK-CU enter the bloodstream per day. The average daily copper dietary intake for men is 1.4 grams, but for safety, let's assume 4 grams per day. This means to enter copper toxicity range, one would have to inject a combination of over 38 milligrams of AHK-CU and GHK-CU every day. Considering that even the most aggressive protocols of GHK-CU injection max at 5 or 10 milligrams per day, it's extremely unlikely that one would accidentally overdose themselves with copper peptides, and that concurrently using both AHK-CU and GHK-CU is completely fine even at full doses of each. This doubly extends for AHK-CU and GHK-CU topicals, which are simply unable to penetrate the skin at levels which would ever result in copper toxicity. To further mitigate copper overdose from high dietary sources, zinc supplementation can help since zinc typically outcompetes copper for absorption within the intestines. Now that we've established that AHK-CU is extremely safe to use, how can we use it for hair growth? AHK-CU is most commonly used in topical serum form. While many copper peptide serums exist for copper tripeptide 1 or GHK-CU, only one product exists to my knowledge in the US that contains copper tripeptide 3 or AHK-CU. That product is Neuragan's AHK-CU plus GHK-CU Hair Serum Pro. After that, cosmetic-grade AHK-CU can be purchased from FDA-approved raw chemical suppliers. Injectable-grade AHK-CU can only be found from peptide vendors for research purposes only, so I can't recommend anyone go down this route. Personally, I plan to research 3 milligrams of AHK-CU per day for 33 days with a 1 to 2 week break afterwards. I also plan to research 2 milligrams of GHK-CU per day for 25 days with a 1 to 2 week break afterwards. I chose these doses due to them falling well within the safety ranges I previously calculated, and as a slightly worse logistical reason, I want to use my reconstituted 100 milligram vials of AHK-CU and 50 milligram vials of GHK-CU each in about a month for safety and sterility reasons. I will offset when I'm actively cycling each, but using them concurrently shouldn't pose an issue in theory. Of course, I plan to supplement with zinc as well to regulate my dietary copper and also to generally gain the benefits of zinc. I plan to share my experiences soon with this research protocol. Thanks for making it this far into my video, and subscribe for more self-improvement content.